Chris, we're just airborne out of Ocala, going to Gainesville to choose mission approaches in the Perspective airplane, not Perspective Plus. So we're going to capture the instrument procedures in general, taking off, getting clearance, checking weather, etc., and doing a variety of approaches into Gainesville today for a full stop.
5 miles east of the Gainesville Airport, fly heading 090.
All right, just catching up with the climb checklist.
Air 704 Delta Romeo, turn right heading 320, vectors for Gainesville.
320, 704 Delta Romeo with a request.
Stand by.
Take visual approach runway 11. Advise you have Alpha.
Heading of 300 for your climb.
Gainesville tower formation Alpha, time 1353 Zulu, winds 150 at 3, visibility 8 miles, skies clear, temperature 18, dew point 16, altimeter is 3017, expect visual approach runway 11, advise you have Alpha.
Expected 436, Ocala, runway heading, now leveling up 2000.
That's at 436.
All right, Alpha 11, I saw that we're a little bit outside the distance for ATIS. You use the squelch button to kind of listen to the ATIS. A little bit crackly, but we got it. Alpha runway 11, so it gives us initial runway at least.
Like that 376, clear direct downo.
What are you going to be requesting first?
That's at 436.
The RNAV 11, low approach to radar. RNAV 11, circle to land 07.
Love it.
How's that sound?
Like it.
Excellent. All right, let me get this bad boy leaned out really quick.
Like that 376, contact Jack Center, 133.32.
Going to minus 50 on the last, correct?
Minus 50, yep. You're going to find that...
You 2 is number 704 Delta Romeo, say request.
704 Delta Romeo, request the RNAV runway 11, low approach to radar, followed by the RNAV 11, circle to land 07, full stop.
Air 704 Delta Romeo, clear direct Manzo for the RNAV 11, change to my frequency 118.17.
Direct Manzo 1817 for Delta Romeo.
23541, turn right heading 300.
Close enough for government work.
Like runway 11.
Okay, right to 30.
All right, so here in the Perspective aircraft, I use the waypoint feature. I'll look at my chart under the waypoint airport option. So we're going to go look at the RNAV runway 11. And we're dead reckoning to Manzo for just a second. And there's my touchdown zone elevation of 147, LPV 460, 1700, inbound course 106. Manzo's going to be my IAF, 2000, 1700, 3-degree glide slope is what I'm putting in my brain with an LPV of 460. To load my approach, because I can't go backwards like I can in a Perspective Plus or a touched airplane, I love using the menu button. So I select menu, load approach is an option. I've got the IAF and the LPV minimums memorized. So whatever chart you're looking at, it comes up highlighted as opposed to the top of the list, which is actually a nice little touch. Right. We're going to go to Manzo, enter.
Enter 720, just to maintain 2000.
And I think I messed that up, but I'll double check it here in a second, because what I'm really prioritizing right now is hitting active so I can start steering to Manzo, because that's what we were cleared IFR. So I've activated it, selecting nav. When you're done loading it, it takes us to the flight plan page. I'll use the big FMS knob, 2 clicks counterclockwise back to the waypoint airport. And what I'm really doing is I'm setting my MFD up for what I call the battle of the arrival. What I care about is having access to frequencies. So I selected info chart, I turned off, so I have my frequencies. I go back to my big knob, I come to the map again, and the show chart soft key is going to bring up the chart, whatever you loaded, and it's flashing. I press enter, and now I'm set up to verify and do my instrument approach briefing. Today it's going to be the RNAV runway 11 via Manzo. It's touchdown zone elevation of 147 with an LPV decision altitude of 460 feet. crossing Keys at 1700 with an inbound approach course of 106. No significant notes that are going to affect us today. The TAA into Manzo from this sector is 2,500 feet. In the event of a mist, we're going to go climb out to 2,000 feet, direct Tusky, and hold standard turns, but non-standard distance of 4 nautical miles. And my last piece is, this is a fast little thing. I review all of my checklists from descent, all right, through the approach and landing, because these are very detailed and they get our eyes inside the airplane. I want my eyes and my brain outside of my airplane while I'm in the terminal area. So I review what I need to do. I've got it set up for after I land, and now I'm going to execute. Now, in the review, I realized I misprogrammed my minimums, so I'm just going to correct that on the PFD.
Using the time ref button.
Using the timer reference button. And now,
good.
Crisis averted.
All right.
I am going to get ahead of my airplane, so big FMS knob. All right. Scrolling clockwise. In this case, the way I have the MFD up, it immediately moves on the first click. So I'm back to airport waypoint.
Which is a user setting, by the way, 1 or 2 clicks. We like ours, 1 click, the actual page moves over to this frequency page.
And what Anthony is talking about is we can change how the buttons respond, and this applies to both Garmin Perspective and Perspective Plus.
After completion of the approach, fly runway heading and maintain 2000.
Runway heading 2000 for Delta Romeo.
So you can see that my page navigation changes immediately upon moving, all right, either the little or the big FMS knob. So anyway, getting ahead of my airplane, back to Waypoint Airport. I'm turning on my cursor by 1 push of the FMS knob. Big FMS knob to move the cursor. I'm selecting my tower freak. My blue transfer arrow, when I press enter, that's where that freak is going to load. Now, me personally, I kind of take a snapshot of what ground is, so it's in the back of my brain. But I will end up using this page eventually to load ground into my standby when I'm on my last approach.
Very good. The quick difference is, as you see on this page really quick, is the fact that in perspective only, wherever your frequency is highlighted, it puts it on standby on whatever your cursor arrows are on the radio right there. Puts it on that position in standby. Perspective Plus gives you the option of where you want to put it, but Perspective, you just be mindful of where your arrows are when you select it. It actually goes to that standby on the correct radio. In this case, the #1 radio.
That is a great highlight. Now, Cirrus recommends 120 knots in the radar pattern procedure turn, 100 knots inbound to the final approach fix. Here at PRP Aviation, we teach 90 knots inside of the final approach fix, so we can always take advantage
1416 Whiskey, fly heading 200, vector sequence
of Cat A minimums. And if you use JEP charts, and you forget the required airspeed, it's over here on a JEP chart. If you're using the government charts, you don't have that little memory jogger.
Aircraft requesting cancel.
But remember, your minimums are based on the airspeed that you plan to fly on your approach, not the published landing speed of the airplane. So for other reasons why PRP teaches 90 knots inside the final approach fix, we deal with Generation 1 through Generation 7 aircraft. They all have different ref speeds for the flaps. So some of those aircraft, the ref speeds are much lower than the Gen 5 through 7. So last but not least, while we're talking about airspeeds on final approach, one of the themes and goals for 2025 with Cirrus are stabilized approaches, right, and landing airspeeds. If you look at
Delta Romeo, 8 miles from Manzo, cleared RNAV runway 11 approach.
Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, 3000 cleared the approach.
So my landing light comes on. That's my memory jogger that I've been cleared for the approach. My ice light is cleared to land.
I'm sorry, 135 Victor Bravo, 7000.
Now,
135 Victor
I'm going to interrupt that conversation about Cirrus's goals for this year because this is a unique situation. Air traffic control said maintain 3,000 till established, cleared the approach. This approach has a published TAA, and you notice in the block it says out to 30 nautical miles from a fix. We are 6 miles from Manzo. The TAA is 2,500. So it is legal for us to descend to 2,500 feet right now because we are established. And doing a small power reduction, we know 40% power in the Generation 3 aircraft will give us about 120 knots.
Flight 3777 Jack.
So we don't have to make these big, huge power changes and get to the airspeed instantaneously. All right, we've set a known power. When the airplane levels off, she's going to elegantly decelerate.
Traffic to site, 1
Now, while talking, I did kind of violate one of my personal rules. When I hear the phrase cleared for the approach, I hit the APR button on any approach that has vertical guidance. This way, I don't screw up. Heck, we can hit that APR button when we're 50 miles away from the IAF if we're cleared for the approach. Yep. Right? One of the things that we see here at PRP is that many of our instrument candidates are getting task saturated and they forget to hit APR when they're cleared for the approach when they are shooting approaches with vertical guidance. Now, my approach has a 2,000 foot no PT leg. I'm in altitude hold at 2,500 feet, always striving to be ahead of my airplane. I'm setting my next altitude.
Flight 548, contact approach 127.77.
So finishing up the conversation about stabilized approaches, we recommend here at PRP flying final approach at 90 knots, primarily for Cat A. The question is when do you set your landing airspeed to give your airplane time to be stable? When you'll see me adjusting my power when I'm 2 miles away from my runway, right? And I'm going to be decelerating from 90 knots, right, to the VREF for this airplane, right? The book says 80 knots. We know that the recommended airspeed for a short field landing is 77 knots, which still has to comply with 1.3 VSO. So ultimately, I'm going to be striving to be right around at 80 knots as my target airspeed, all right? Because today we're going to be doing our approach, all right, at flaps 100.
Golf is going to maintain 7,000.
And I make that adjustment at about 2 miles. The benefit of this is if you give your GFC 700 autopilot a little bit of time to be stabilized, when you turn the autopilot off, guess what? Your airplane is going to be nearly trimmed. It's one of the benefits of getting the airplane on speed early as opposed to changing your airspeed constantly as you come over the fence. All right, again, altitude hold. I'm an old guy. I verify my altitude so I don't mess it up. My next altitude is 1,700 feet. Starting my turn, my CDI is staying within 1 dot. I'm established. Vertical speed my way.
Romeo, contact Gainesville Tower.
4 Delta Romeo.
And plans 541, you can make a 180 back taxi to Charlie.
Hey, 541, 180 back taxi to Charlie, thanks very much.
And once you exit there, you can taxi.
Starting the turn, inbound to the final approach fix. My target airspeed is now 100 knots. Recommended power setting for the Gen 3 SR-22 is 30 to 35% power. Today, it's really cold out. This airplane is flying really fast. Now, I also have another habit. When I level off at my final approach fix altitude, step 1, I set a known power. Step 2, I go mixture rich, setting up for a potential go-around. It's habitual as a defense against getting distracted and forgetting it when I really need it.
That's a good time to run the entire backwards question mark checklist as well, just kind of run through them.
Gainesville Tower, Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo. RNAV runway 11, low approach to radar.
704 Delta Romeo, Gainesville Tower, runway 11, cleared low approach.
Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, cleared low approach runway 11.
All right, I'm in altitude hold at my final approach fix altitude. My next altitude is my missed approach altitude, or in this case, we have climb out instructions to 2,000, trying to get ahead of my airplane. And you can notice with the power set, the airplane is gracefully decelerating. And I love this new 345R transponder.
Sounds great.
Well, no, I'm talking about
that's the audio.
all the traffic that we, you know, now that we've got 345R and active traffic in this airplane. As a reminder, we begin our configuration of our aircraft when the vertical guidance starts moving. So the vertical guidance is still caged at the top of the scale. As soon as the diamond, in this case magenta, starts moving, airspeed check, all right, we'll be extending from flaps 0 to flaps 50. Here's the vertical guidance coming in. Notice I'm not adding power. My power is set. The recommended power settings that we're teaching, in this case, 30%, right, to get 100 knots, is actually making the assumption that we're at flaps 50. You notice the airplane was about 115. That's okay. It's no slower than 100. So a little bit of drag, we've slowed down just a little bit. You will notice, because the Cirrus, she goes down or she slows down. She doesn't like doing both, especially if you pitch the nose of the Cirrus over without a power reduction, the airspeed just starts accelerating. So when the bottom of my diamond touches the on glide path line,
keep speed up, 457.
You'll see me doing a power reduction to about 15% power. And that 15% power...
457, I got company traffic on a 7 mile straight in for runway 7, coming in on a circling approach.
We're holding 144 right now, so that's pretty much all we'll be able to give her.
No worries, if it doesn't work, I'll move you out of the way.
And you notice that the airplane decelerated nicely to somewhere around 90-ish knots.
If you can, slow it down for me. I got company traffic ahead and to your right coming in on a VFR approach. They're going to jump in front of you.
We'll slow it down about 85, 16 Whiskey.
Perfect, thank you.
We always cage our heading bug. Obviously in the Perspective airplane, we don't have sync mode available to us.
Hazel traffic, the wind's 160 at 7. Sky 20457, runway 7, clear to land. As you approach the airport, you're going to see Cirrus crossing left to right in front of you.
We're out of the weather. We're above 500 feet. Airspeed checked, flaps 100.
I'll be looking out for that Cirrus, 457.
So when I feel the airplane start to dig in as the flaps extend, it's about 2 seconds after the switch moves. Right? I'm going to add just a touch of power. It's about 20% power in the clean wing 22. That's going to give me right
16 Whiskey, that traffic
right around that
jump
90.
In front of you is about your 2 o'clock, 1.5 miles down.
90 knots configured.
We have traffic inside.
And what I'm waiting for is 2 miles. There we are at 2 miles. Again, small power reduction.
Calling Punta Gorda again. Sky 20457. Look just ahead to your left about your 10 o'clock, a mile and a quarter. Is that Cirrus doing the low approach to runway 11?
I'm looking for 457.
All right, we're simulating that we're still in the weather.
500.
Getting her on speed.
Check 16 Whiskey.
It's about 20% power.
Runway 11, clear to land.
Runway 11, clear to land, 1416 Whiskey.
And we passed 760 for 460. 560 for 460. Simulating that we're still in the weather.
457, traffic just ahead and to your left now. You can resume your normal speed.
Airspeed.
Normal speed, 457.
Minimums.
They're about a quarter mile on final doing the low approach.
Still on Edmund side, 457.
Wow.
He can't see us still.
Sierra 704 Delta Romeo is going missed approach, and we have the traffic going to 7 in sight.
4 Delta Romeo, roger. Execute your climb out contact, Jacks. Have a great day. We'll see you on the way back.
4 Delta Romeo.
Wow.
600.
That was interesting. All right, full power, positive rate. We're over flapper traction. We went heading, and now we're above cap, so we're going to select our climb out airspeed of 120 via IAS.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Not
was
seeing us.
Yeah.
And just for the video, we had a aircraft on our right doing a
466
simultaneous approach runway 7,
118.17.
paralleling like this, and he just could not see us. We were not a factor with him, but he just couldn't see us.
Yeah, we're about a quarter mile away.
3777, traffic 1 o'clock, 3 miles northwestbound, type and altitude unknown, primary target only.
Jack's approach, Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, 1,700, climbing 2,000.
Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, Jack's departure, ident maintain 2,000.
4 Delta Romeo, 2,000 with a flash.
Cirrus 6 Charlie Echo, Jack's approach, roger. Cirrus 808 Delta Echo, Jack's approach, locale altimeter 3016, expect a slight amendment to your route. And Angel Flight 3777, that traffic appears like it'll be off your right, about a half mile north of final. Would you like to continue on the approach or vector in tighter?
I don't know if you want this on the video.
Angel Flight 3777.
What I was just doing is what I call the poor
290.
man's leaning of a normally aspirated SR-22.
704 Delta Romeo, radar contact 3 east of the Gainesville Airport, turn right heading of 250, vectors RNAV 7.
All right, right turn heading 250. We're actually requesting the RNAV 11 circle to 07, please.
04 Delta Romeo, say again.
We're requesting the RNAV 11 circle to land, runway 07, please.
All right, 8 Delta Echo, stand by. 04 Delta Romeo, roger. Still continue heading 250.
250, 4 Delta Romeo.
All right, so what we saw was what I affectionately call the poor man's lean.
Okay.
When I'm busy in a perspective-equipped aircraft, I make my initial power reduction to 70% power, and then I lean until I get 65. I've done this so many times, it's within 1/10 of a gallon.
Okay, very good.
That's not my normal way of leaning. My normal method of leaning is to use lean assist, but when I'm busy, the benefits of leaning are still important, but the time to use lean assist, it's just the wrong priority.
Very good.
So, cool thing about Perspective, whether it's Perspective, Perspective Plus, or Touch, I should say a cool thing about Garmin, is if I go missed approach, the airplane assumes that we're going to go back for another approach. I don't have to go crazy and reprogram stuff if I'm going back to the same runway. All I have to do is go procedure, activate the approach, it'll take me to the IAF, or activate vectors to final, right, because it automatically sequences the flight plan. So if you take a look at my flight plan right now, we are in the missed approach phase. So when I go procedure, activate the approach, the airplane completely resequenced the flight plan, in this case Manzo, the IAF. I don't need to get crazy about reprogramming and reloading. It's all there waiting for me. Now, this is important.
We're lucky
for the check ride.
We were lucky with
4 Delta Romeo, turn right heading 280.
280, 4 Delta Romeo.
I'll touch on that lucky piece, because that's actually a great point. I didn't think about it. So really quick, we said that we're going to do the RNAV runway 11. Everything's the same with the exception that we're going to circle. So again, I'm using timer reference is one way to change my minimums. Or another way to change the minimums is go back to load the approach. And then everyone touches an FMS knob. I recommend keep your finger on the enter button. And this applies to Perspective and Perspective Plus. Because the only thing, had we vectored north and they took me to the other IAF, I could have just changed the IAF there and reactivated the approach. In this case, we had Manzo loaded. I just need to change the baro altitude. And I really like using timer ref because I look at the chart. But there are two ways to make that change.
Bravo, clear direct
so in this situation, to make my change, my circling MDA is 620 feet. Timer ref. In the Perspective airplane, I have to use the FMS knob on the PFD. 620 feet. Timer ref coming off. There it is. Everything on the approach is the same, except that we're going to be flaps 50 until we are configured on what looks like a 3-degree approach, and that's when we're going to go to flaps 100. Not ever exceeding 30 degrees of bank on a circling approach for your instrument check ride.
Correct. And not putting flaps full to your on base leg, not on downwind.
Well, base or some 3-degree, because you may not be on a pure base.
Just not on downwind was my point.
That's a great point. So I did demonstrate activating the approach, making Manzo the 2-way point. I'm pretty confident that our controller is going to give us vectors. And there's a very easy quick fix. Back to proc, select, enter is the way that we fix that if she all of a sudden changes the game plan.
And number 4 Delta Romeo, this will be to a full stop, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Should have used my call sign. One of the things that I love about the Garmin suites, Perspective, Perspective Plus, Garmin Touch. If I'm at an airport that has a VOR that I know is working, for example, if we were shooting an ILS, when we load it and activate it, each time it retunes the nav radios.
Yes. It
automatically loads the courses. I will manually go back and tune my, if I'm shooting the approach on nav 1, right, I'd tune nav 2. But I like having a VOR tuned into the airport with my bearing pointers displayed on my HSI, because I always know my distance from the airport. And it's not taught as often about really how to use these little bearing pointers. Remember, you are always on the tail of a bearing pointer. A bearing pointer just points at something. So, me personally, in my mind, I pretend that the airplane symbol is whatever it's pointing at, in this case, the Gators VOR. And I come on that tail of that bearing pointer. I know technically right now I'm on the 264 radial for 8.7 miles off of Gators, i.e. I'm west of Gators right now.
Right.
And since Gators is on the airport, I'm west of the airport. It's a great tool for situational awareness. And now we wait.
Center 704 Delta Romeo, turn right heading 020.
020, 4 Delta Romeo.
Did a small power reduction, all right, with the intention of setting my radar pattern airspeed of 120 knots. And we intentionally flew fast on downwind this morning because we have a meeting in Gainesville that we have to make. So I know she's putting me on vectors. So procedure, activate vectors to final. And if you didn't catch that, my hand did a Garmin Perspective move there for a second. Yeah, I twisted the wrong knob.
I'll roger that.
Yeah. So now it's cleaned up the flight plan. Keys, my final.
704 Delta Romeo, 5 miles from the final approach fix, turn right heading 090, maintain 2000 till established, clear to RNAV runway 11 approach, circle runway 7.
Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, 090 2000, cleared the approach.
We're doing an approach without vertical guidance, so we're hitting the nav button, not the APR button. So nav is selected because we are going to be flying this today as a dive and drive. You may have noticed as soon as the controller used my call sign, my hand took the heading knob and I just started spinning it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a very important point.
I didn't know what the exact number was. I was spinning it to get the airplane turning.
Good.
Most instrument candidates,
they'll wait.
And we are now established, 1700, vertical speed going down. All right, aviate, navigate, communicate, teachicate. So we're going to simulate today that we do not have any vertical guidance. to demonstrate how to configure the airplane on this approach. But back to that conversation with the heading knob, many instrument candidates, they prioritize talking. They hear ATC, they feel like they have to respond to ATC.
Left heading 340 and climb maintain 1010,000.
They repeat, the instructions back. Then they come in here and you can see their brain think about it for about...
Romeo, connect Gainesville Tower, 109.55.
1955, 4 Delta Romeo.
All right, final approach fix altitude, mixture rich, altitude hold. Setting my missed approach altitude in there. What I'm doing right now is I'm using my tools to set my ground in before I talk to tower. Ground, when you're going to full stop, ground needs to be in your standby before you talk.
Some airplanes out there, cross runway 4 approach. Proceed Alpha.
96 Mike, are you going over to the ramp or are you just a taxi back?
We're going to the FBO.
96 Mike,
so 2 miles should have been my trigger. Got a little bit busy.
Alpha FBO, 196 Mike.
Gainesville Tower, Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, RNAV 11, circle to land 07 full stop.
Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, Gainesville Tower. You can circle at your discretion, runway 7, clear land right now, the wind's 160 at 5.
Cirrus 704 Delta Romeo, circle our discretion and clear to land runway 07.
All right, point 3, VS. Point 1, power reduction. Point 0, VS, and somewhere between 5 to 800 foot per minute. This is a very long final going into the RNAV runway 11.
SR-2, final go to ground, runway 22, taxi via Foxtrot. Delta,
and I needed a bigger power reduction
because
we are descending. I'm getting a CAS message for altitude select because we level the airplane off using the out button because we've got our missed approach set. I actually, if my right index finger isn't doing anything, I keep it near the altitude button as a reminder I had to push out. What happens with Garmin is when you push out, whatever altitude you're at, it grabs it and it puts it immediately into altitude hold. So here we are on our way down 1220, going down to 620. Right? Wanted to talk about how to figure out how to circle. Every airport is different. Right? I like getting down 2.5 to 3 miles from the airport, the aerodrome, so I can get underneath the weather, so I can start looking and figure out how am I going to fly my airplane, because it's not necessarily going to be a perfect base, or it's going to be something that I have to figure out how I am going to make this thing happen. So there's 860 for 620. I'm always moving the airport to the top of the screen. 720 for 620. 50 to 100 feet, press the altitude button, add just a little power so you don't get slow. Circle airspeed in the SR-22 and the SR-20 90 knots. I'm in altitude hold at 710. I'm going to use the thumb wheel to tweak it down, and I'm going to set it to about 630.
Airspeed.
All right, I've broken out of the weather. I can see the airport. My heading bug is mashed. I'm going to go into heading, and I can use heading to start turning the airplane.
Pastor 2, as you make a turn on the Charlie,
and I'm trying to make it look like something normal. Right? Autopilot is coming off,
they may need to make a stop here and there.
And this is going to become the question of, do I leave the flight director on? If I'm not following the flight director, I'm turning the flight director off.
I've got one aircraft taxiing out behind you, going to runway 22. They're aware of your inspection in progress.
I'm kind of on a base, airspeed check, flaps 100, and I'm now going to try and make it look like what the best I can for a visual landing, aiming 500 feet down with the goal of my airplane touching down 1,000 feet down this runway. A little bit high, so power reduction. Power is controlling my vertical speed. It's controlling my vertical trajectory. All right? 1 red, adding a little power back to be on glide path. Aim point airspeed, aim point airspeed. A little gusty winds today. That's fun. All right? Little power out for landing assured idle. Hold the aim point for a second, and now I'm going into my quiet flare. Instrument approach, I should touch 1,500 to 2,000 feet down the runway.